Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome back to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are going to be continuing with our Ultimate Battle Royale series. And now with this episode, we're going to be focusing on the player lobby. I'm sure you're very familiar with this concept. A lot of games like Fortnite, PUBG, Warzone. This is the screen you come to where you get to see your character, you see the menu, you can choose your outfits, your customizations, and you choose what kind of a play style you want to do. Single player, teams, anything like that. You hit play and you jump right in, right? So today we're going to be setting up some of the visuals and some of the world here. We're going to expand a lot on this. We're going to do the coding, some of the coding next time, and we will come back to this scene a lot, okay? So don't worry about it. We're not going to finish it today because there's a lot to do, but we're going to get started with it. So here I am inside the project, and as you can see at the top here, I have loaded the player lobby scene. So to do that, we're going to say File, Open Scene, in case you haven't done this already. Go to your Scenes folder, into the pun, and we want the player lobby. Not the player login, but the player lobby. So if I open that, you'll see it's the same scene. Here we are. Nothing has been done. Nothing's been changed. We're all set. We're ready to go. Before we get started, in the download link in the description, you'll find a download link to the textures we're going to use for this video. Now, I have them over here. I'm going to pull them over here. So here you go. We have 5 textures here. So I'm just going to pull these in. So off screen, I'm going to select them. And I'm here in my Assets, Materials, Textures, UI folder. So if you browse to that, that's Assets. You go Materials, because materials are made with textures. I always have a subfolder called Textures. Now, what is the category? Well, this is going to be UI work, right? So I'm going to go to UI, and then let's make a folder here. Right-click, Create Folder. We'll call this Player Lobby. So we know these are specifically textures that are designed for the player lobby. So I'll open that up, and now again from off screen, I'm going to click and drag these guys and drag and drop them right into there. There you go. So now they're all in here. So what I'm going to do is select all of them, and I'm going to go up here and say the texture type. You're definitely going to be Sprite 2D and UI. These are going to be UI 2D elements. And I'll go down here to my compression and turn that to none and click apply. There we go. That's all we have to do for these. Now this one is going to have a little bit of transparency to it, but see the alpha is transparency is already checked. If I pull this up, you can see our title card here, the Ultimate Battle Royale. Very cool. So this is just a stand-in card. Later I'll do other tutorials if you guys are interested, or maybe as part of the Patreon, or maybe as part of our Udemy course. I'll go over how to create these graphics if you want, but for now you can use this until you can fill in your own graphics. Or if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments, let me know in Discord. If you guys want videos about how to create these graphics, then we'll do that as well, okay? All right, so we have those all set. So now I'm just gonna go down the list here. We're gonna set up as much as we can for today. And next time, like I said, we'll do some coding or work on some other things from there. So first up, let's go ahead and set up our directional light. We're gonna use this camera, but let's set up our directional light first. So these are the default settings. I haven't touched it at all. This is the way it comes. We're going to change this just a little bit. I'm going to change the values here to -135 on the Y for the rotation. And this is going to just rotate the light around so that we have a shadow casting in a certain direction. You'll see a little bit later, okay? And then on the Z, into -60, okay? And that's pretty much it. I'm not really going to change much else. We'll leave it all alone for now. And then I will turn on the lighting. As you can see, you can't see it yet because there's nothing to light up. So next up, let's go ahead and create our canvas object. So the canvas object, we just right click here in our hierarchy, and I'm going to say UI, I'm going to say canvas, and there we go. So it'll create a canvas, and you see it creates this event system. We need that for clicking on the canvas. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag and drop it inside the canvas. That way, now it's just this one object. I can move around, I can make it a prefab, but I'm sure that it always comes with the event system, which we definitely need. In my scene view, I'm going to click on 2D. And I'm going to click on the canvas once. And then in the scene view, I'm going to hit the F key to focus. Focus on that. And here it is. It'll show us just like this. Perfect. Now we're going to set our settings over here. So the canvas mode is going to be screen space overlay. That's fine. Then down here in the canvas scaler, I'm going to change this to say scale with screen size. Now my reference resolution is going to be 1920 by 1080. That is the desired output that we want. And this will try to match that as best it can based upon when you resize the window and do things like that, okay? Our match scale, I'm going to put it at 0.5, so it'll be evenly distributed between width and height. And then on my references per pixel, I'm going to say 1. So absolutely exactly as you see it. Now, if you haven't already, up here in the game view in your display, I do have a 16:9 aspect ratio chosen. You can see I got a couple others for my phone and different ones I've been working on, right? So if you don't have that already, you can create that by clicking this drop down and clicking this little plus icon here and then choosing it. So you can call it something, tell it it's a fixed, tell it it's an aspect ratio is a good one. Aspect ratio means it'll change, it'll scale. So then you can type in here 16 and 9 if you don't already have a 16:9 and then click OK. I'm going to click cancel for now because I already have it. And you can just click on these to select in between them. Very good. So 16:9, we have our canvas going in. Perfect. All right, that guy's all set. So the next object we're going to create is just going to be like a helper object, and we're going to add some code to this later on. But on the canvas, I'm going to right click and say create empty. Move this above the event system. And I'm going to call this main menu. I didn't spell it correctly. There you go. Main menu. I'm going to give him a width and height of 1920 by 1080, so he is the full size of the object. You can also click on the center here and do fully stretch. But I like to set the scale for these container objects, and you'll see that later. Later, we're going to be adding our main menu manager script here. So this is just going to be an object that is containing everything, and it will have the code here that we can then take that code and say, okay, button, you reference me as to how you work. Okay? All right. So next item up, we're going to do right click and we're going to say create a UI, and this is going to be an image. There you go. And this is going to be our bottom menu bar. Okay. Now we're doing these in sort of reverse order because the way Unity UI works is the bottommost item in the hierarchy is actually what's on top most. So if you think about it, like say you have your desk, right? And then you have a piece of paper on your desk. Well, in the hierarchy here, the paper would be here, and then above it would be your desk, because it does it in reverse order, okay? So our menu bar here, we're going to start using some of the items we have down here. So first, let's go ahead and set its information here. So in the inspector here, I'm going to choose this and choose the bottom left-hand corner. There we go. And I'm going to hold Alt and then click the button again. And you'll see what happens is it jumped down to the bottom, meaning this first one says, I want to set my position, the pivot, and then here I also want to set the position of it. So it automatically sets it there for us, which is great. We're going to change it a little bit, but it's great that it does it for us. So let's go ahead and set our numbers here. So in the X, I'm going to set this to 960, position of 32. My width is going to be 1920, and my height is going to be 64. So now you can see it perfectly sits right there in the bottom left-hand corner. Now for the image that we're going to choose, we're going to click this and we're going to find bottom bar. So I'm going to search for the word bottom, B-O-T-T, and there you go, bottom bar. And there he is. So that'll just sit there at the bottom. This will be things like the copyright information, things that might pop up, whatever. The top menu bar is going to be most of what we're going to be working with today. Speaking of the top menu bar, we're going to go ahead and create that. Now what we can do is we can just duplicate this bottom menu bar and we'll rename it. So what I can do is we'll just back that out and then just remove the word bottom and change this to the top. Now for this guy, we're going to go top left. So let's do this and that, and there you go. Perfect. And his number should be, yes, 960, -32, 1920, and 64. And we're going to click on the image source and say, I want the top menu bar. And the reason this is important is because this guy has our buttons, the background imagery to it, kind of already baked in. This is one way to do buttons. We'll go over a more advanced way in the Patreon and in the Udemy, but it's just a quick get you up and running kind of thing. And these are kind of the settings we're going to be talking about. So your missions will be how you play the game. Character will be all of your character stuff. The safe house is kind of like Escape from Tarkov. We're going to have a little area where you can customize things. The market is to buy things, online orders, so you can do like the coins or the points to spend. So we will do in-app purchasing with this kind of stuff here. Settings, of course, and then to exit the game. Okay? So there we have that for now. Next up, we're going to have some lines that go in here later, but we'll come back to those. Let's go ahead and talk about our title card. So let's go ahead and right-click and say another UI image. And this is going to be our title. So the title here, he's going to have a top left corner as well. Let's put him in there. And his numbers are going to be 185.5 on the X, negative 84 on the Y, the width of 371, 370 I think it is on mine, and then 168 on the height. 370. Need a 0 there, Matt. There you go. So he's right up in the corner, and this is going to be our little title card. And again, we click here to choose a title, and there it is. We'll just pick that guy right there. Boom, there it is. Looking pretty good, right? So that's just your title card. That's your name of your game. Again, feel free to fill this in with your own, or I can do tutorials later on how to do that. Okay? Perfect. Now, before we go too far, let's go back to our top menu bar. We do have a lot of buttons under here, right? So let's create those. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a sub-object, create empty, and this is going to be menu buttons. Okay? And now here, because he is underneath this object already, what I'm going to do is choose these options here. So for the rect transform, click in the center, and then click in the bottom right, and then hold Alt and click in the bottom right. And you see what happens is he got stretched all the way to fill the bounds of the object that he is a child of, which is our top menu bar. Because we defined where that's going to be, now when we put this guy in, he's just an empty kind of ethereal object. He's just kind of there because he's going to hold other things. He's going to hold our menu buttons. And so because of that, we have this here. We can just say, you know what? Just fill yourself to your parent. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to create some buttons. We're going to create 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons in total across here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say UI, come on, and button. There you go. So there's going to be 6 of these. So we're going to create one, get the sizing right, create all of them, and then position them, okay? So first up, we're going to do a proper nomenclature. So BTN is the shorthand for button, underscore, and we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to say name for now because we're going to redo these, right? My sprite UI, I'm going to set this to none, actually. We're not actually going to have a visual to these because the visual is already baked into our image, all right? So then for my color here, I'm going to take the alpha and put it all the way to 0. So he's kind of invisible at the moment. For the size, we're going to do 256 on the width and 64 on the height. So that's going to be the size of our button. And like I said, again, we're going to position them in a moment. And then I don't think we have anything else that we need to do with these just yet. Nope, not yet. So that's good for now. So again, we have 6 of these we want to create, right? And we don't even need the subparts to it. So if you open up your button, click the little arrow here, you see there's text. Normally you would have this text for your button, you know, but for us, we don't need it. We're going to delete it because again, it's baked into our image. Okay, so we have 6 of these we need. So let's duplicate them. So I'm going to select it and hit Control D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now there are 6 of them in total. So one by one, I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, let's rename the name part of this to missions, and it will give it its position X and Y. Now the Y should not have to change, so it's only going to be the X that changes. And this one is going to be negative 450. And you can double check it here. It should line up here, so it should look like, you can see in the image, there's these artificial kind of separators that I created in the texture. So the 2 edges of your button should line up in those separators. So that's how you can know that you're in the right spot. Perfect. So we'll just go down the list here real quick. Next one up is character. And he is going to be set to, oh, there it is, negative 194. Boom, right there. Very cool. Next up, we have safe house. It's a nice and easy way to save yourself some time. Make sure that you're not overworking, you know, only do what you have to do and then duplicate the successful work. Don't spend time creating extra things. All right, here we go. Next one up is going to be market. And this guy's going to be set to 318. If I didn't mention, sorry, the safe house is at 62 on the X, and the market is at 318. Okay, next up is settings. So let's do that. Come on. Don't want to select too far. And the settings button is going to be at 574. There we are. And now let's go to the final one, which is our exit button. Exit. There we go. And our exit button is going to be at 830. There we go. And we can double check that real quick just by selecting each one here, and you can see it highlight here. There you go. There you go. They kind of leapfrog off of each other. Perfect. So now we have functioning buttons. They do work. They don't do anything yet. So if you come down here, you'll see on click So we're going to add an event later on. And you remember I talked about how our main menu object is going to have that code. So in theory, what we're going to do here is click this and say, where do we want the code to come from? We drag and drop that in here. So that will be our main menu eventually. And then this will be able to reach into the code, and any public functions we created, we can draw from those and say, when I click this button, call this function on this object. So that's kind of how it's going to work in the end. Right now, we'll leave them alone because we'll come back to that when we do the coding episode. All right. So next up, we're going to do our play menu. So this is going to be pretty exciting. Let's close these guys up. And this is still underneath of our total menu, but it's not part of the main menu, right? This is just part of a normal menu. So let's right click here. And for our play menu, let me take a look at our settings here. Make sure I get this right. Yep. Play menu is going to be for the whole screen, right? So we're going to say create empty. We're going to call this play. Ooh, not all capitals, Matt. There we go. Play menu. There you go. And again, we're going to click this guy and say full screen. Hold Alt, full screen. So it is just a big old container, right? That's all we want him to be. And I'm going to put the title underneath this because we're going to put some visuals inside of the play menu right here. And we want the title to be the absolute topmost thing, right? So it's got to be the absolute bottommost thing here. Okay, so inside of our play menu, we're going to create a couple things. And this is going to be a little confusing at first, but follow me here. We're going to create a drawer that you can click and open. And I'll show you how this is going to work. It's going to be really neat. So first item up for bid here, we're going to create, I'm just going to create an empty, well, it is going to be an image. So we'll do UI image. And all of the settings are as follows. So for our X, we're going to 704, Y, minus 331, 0, width of 272, and a height of 130. So this is going to be where our button is going to be on the screen to say, I want to play the game. I want to just click go, right? Perfect. Now, for the image here, we're going to use our play button. So let's drag and drop that in here. That's another way you can do that. You can click this and find it, or if you see it here, since it's already open, I can just click and drag, and there you go. So this is what our play button looks right here. We're going to need some text on it later on that says play. So I do need to do that. That I did not bake into the texture here like I should have, but we can easily remedy that. We just do UI, and you can do Text Mesh Pro, which is my personal favorite. I don't like using normal text if I can help it. And we'll do the word play. Maybe all capitals. You can choose a nice fancy text here. The ones that come with it are pretty good. I kind of like this bangers one. It's pretty cool. It's nice and stylized. We'll do bold, center on both alignments to make it centered and centered. And now in here you can see how big it is. So let's go ahead and stretch this out to the corners like so and like so. And then we can make it bigger in the middle. So I'm just going to do this, just click and drag it up and say something like that. We'll do 80. That looks good. Just nice and big and bold so we have the word play. It doesn't match the font I used for these exactly, but it's pretty close. So there you go. So this is our play button. So this is, again, let's rename it properly. This is our play button drawer. Okay, great. Now we're going to create a couple of sub objects to this. There's going to be a whole bunch of sub objects to this actually, but we do have this button over here. Let me take a look at my notes here, called play button base. Okay, and it's very similar. So I'm going to duplicate this, and we're going to call this play button base, and I'm going to go in and get rid of the text element for that. Okay. Now this guy is on top of him, but I don't think we actually need to see him. No, not yet. So I will I'll undo that for a moment. There you go. Just so we can still see it. So this guy's going to be on top of him for the moment, and he's going to be one of the actual buttons that we end up pressing when all is said and done. Okay. So his elements are going to be very much the same here, and he is going to be animated eventually. So he is actually going to pull out. So he will be underneath. And watch what's going to happen is we're going to do this. We're going to have this come out from underneath. And we're going to mask it off and everything. So then your other options will be underneath there. It's going to look really cool. Okay, so we have 2 more buttons to create. And then we'll be able to go into this and create those sub buttons. Next up, play button. Let's do this and say UI. And this is going to be an official button. So we can call this BTN _ play game. This is going to be the official button that you press to say, I'm ready to jump in and start shooting people. So our options here are going to be 704 minus 314. Again, 272, but only 97 for this. He's just going to be this top part right here. See that? Now we're going to go to the color and we're going to say for the alpha, let's put that to 0. We don't actually need to see it because we're just going to have the play, play button text there. We don't actually need to see the rest of it. The background imagery is already there and our underneath is going to slide out. So we're not going to really need any of that. For your source image, you can hit none. We don't need it. There you go. Okay. So he's all set for now. Next button, I'm just going to duplicate this guy since I'm right here. Boop. And let's rename him to button play drawer pull. So this is the actual button that we're going to press, this part down here, that is going to activate that pulling the drawer open, which is going to have the other options in there. Okay? So this guy has some pretty specific settings. Let me see just really quickly what he looks like. Okay, cool. So his options are very similar. We have the 704 and then the minus 379. He's going to go a little bit lower because he's only going to be so high, right? And then he's only 32 on the height. So if we visualize him there, let me give you a little bit of visualization there. Can you see that? Maybe if I bring this up. There you go. So that's how big he is there. So this guy is the button we're going to press to say, open my options so I can see what's there, right? But he's going to be invisible for now because we don't need any of that. That's really cool. Okay, that button's all set. We're all good there. Now, the final bit is to actually fill in the buttons that are going to be inside the drawer. Now, all of these buttons, again, we can get rid of the text on this guy because we're not going to need that. And one of these still has the text and we don't need it. That one, there you go. Okay. So this guy is very similar to the 3 that are going to be in here. So I'm just going to duplicate him, but they're going to go underneath the drawer. Okay. It's a little bit confusing, but don't worry. So duplicate once, drag and drop him underneath the drawer. And now let's rename him. So this is going to be, they're all going to be very similar. Button, play, drawer, and then they're going to have a name at the end. So I'm just going to do that for now, right? So underneath this guy, I'm going to have 2 more of these. And this guy, we're going to rename to, he's going to be our bottom, so BOT. And then this guy, we're going to rename to mid. So he's the middle button, right? Makes sense. You see where this is going? Now this one's going to be our top button, top. Perfect. So we have these 3 buttons. And just for consistency's sake, I am going to add a space right there. There you go. So these 3 buttons are all right now just kind of stacked on top of here. So they need to kind of stack upwards. 1, 2, 3 on top of each other, right? So let me refer to my notes here, and I've got top, middle, and bottom. Okay. So for the bottom one, he is at 0, minus 48. Actually, minus 48.81 to be absolutely precise. And then he is 32.37. So he's right there. And again, we're not going to get any of this. But we can take a look at it to confirm for ourselves where this guy is at. Right now he's underneath so we can't see him. So perfect. He's hidden. Next up is our mid button. So let's go our mid button. Here we go. So 0, negative 16.5. So it's less negative down. That means it's higher up, right? And then down here, yes, 32.37. Perfect. That guy's all set. Again, you can see the little arrow things are here. That means it's higher up. And you can see the faint line here. Maybe you can't see it very well in the video, but there's one here. Now there's one here. Perfect. We're doing really well. Okay, finally up we have our top. Top is 0, 15.8. So this means he's even higher because now he's a positive number going upwards. 32.37 again. And we're all set there. There he is. You can see him there. Now as I click these, you can see that handle move. We know that they're underneath there. Perfect. So now the idea is we're going to click this button. I'm going to have the drawer actually slide out. And in the drawer, we're going to have these other buttons, right? So for the drawer, let me just hide this for right now. And let's take a look. Inside of our buttons here that we just created, we're going to have a text thing that is going to give us the name, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So for the bottom one, right click and say UI. text mesh pro text. Okay. And his settings are going to be, what do we have here? 2 and 2 right there. 200 by 50 is fine. And this one's going to say team dash 4-player. All right. Now I'm going to change the settings here a little bit, make sure this is a bit smaller. So I have 24 on the font size. And then I have, of course, the center and center. And we can change the font. We can put it to the bangers one. I like that one, like I said. Now, this is the text for our bottom button inside the drawer. So if I completely collapse this for a moment just to show you, and we move the drawer out, look at that. Look at how cool that is. So the idea is when you click this button, whatever you currently have selected will be here. The rest of this will slide out. And then you'll say, okay, now select the one you want. The texts of these will rearrange themselves, and then the whole drawer will slide back closed. Okay? So that's what we're going for ultimately. I did notice that for that text, he needs to come up just a little bit. And I do think I missed that. I apologize. Yeah, the X is going to be minus 2.4. I'm sorry, upways. He needs to come up just a little bit because he was not quite centered. There we go. So 3.6 on the Y. Perfect. Now, we're just going to do the same thing for the other two guys. And they should be relatively simple to be the same. Let's see. To that, yes. Perfect. Okay, so for the mid, we're going to right click and say UI, Text Mesh Pro Text. Okay. So again, mid is very simple. We're going to call this trio. Is going to be our term for a 3-player game. 3-player. Okay, trio dash 3-player. We're going to choose our bangers font. We're going to choose 24 and center and center. And again, we can give ourselves a quick look. Looks good. I've done something wrong with the bottom one. Let's see here. Bottom text. I'm sorry. I keep messing with the bottom text. Just going to move it down a little bit again. Problem with that. Okay, we'll fix it later. For the top button here, let's take a look at our top button text and when we're ready to move on. So for the top button, and this is just our initial setup, I should mention. We're going to swap these around as the different situations occur. So for our text here, let's go ahead and set up our text. This is going to say duos, 2-player. Perfect. Now, choose our right font, bangers, there we are. Not bold, sorry. 24, center and center. And now, finally, if we choose our drawer, open up, there we go. So this will slide down. You'll be able to choose the remaining option because the first one is going to just be solo. So let's take a look at that. Where's the solo button at? Play button, the drawer pull. Yeah, the drawer pull has one on itself. So if we go to our drawer pull, that's hard to say, drawer pull. Let's right click and let's add a UI Text Mesh Pro to that. So this is the one that is the currently selected option, right? So this one is going to say solo 1-player. That's going to be our default. And let's choose this and say bangers and 24 and then center and center. There we go. So now our play menu is all set. So let's review really quickly. So we have our play menu is this whole big object. Inside of that, we have our play drawer, which is behind all of this options. The play base is on top. This is our base covering. Really, this is just more visual than anything else. Our play button to play the game is an invisible button that exists right here that is just as high as that top part, right? Then you have the pull, which is this button on the bottom here, which is only really indicated by this text, because then the whole drawer is going to slide out. And we're going to choose what we want, and then the drawer will slide back in. So we'll work on that functionality with the coding stuff, so don't worry about that just yet, okay? All right, so we are almost done here, guys. So the last thing we're going to do for today is not really related to the menu, but more of the background visuals of our scene, right? So like we said, we come to this menu, we come to the player lobby, and we're going to have to see our characters, right? Well, we need to see that part working now, okay? So we'll close up our canvas. Let's go ahead and hit save since we've been working hard. And now I'm going to right click and say create an empty object. And this empty object, my idea for this series is we're going to have multiple player lobbies. So when you load the game, it can load into a random one, or you can have one that you like, you can set as your favorite. No problem. So for today, let's call this lobby A, okay? So our first lobby, and I'm going to set some strange values here at first, but you'll see why in a moment. So for our values for lobby A is going to be minus 55.7, negative 0.5, and then 54.6, okay? A little bit odd, I understand. Now, underneath of that, I'm going to create another empty object, and I'm going to call this lobby environment. So eventually we're going to put models and all kinds of stuff in here to like show a nice little scene. But for now, for today, we're just going to set one quick setting of 44 on the position. And everything else is 0 and 1s, okay? Now, underneath that, underneath but not underneath lobby A is where we're going to put our actual camera. So let's move our camera, put it in here. Now we need to set some settings here. So this is going to be 55, 1.37, negative 51.4, pardon me. And our rotation is going to be 172, okay? And I think that's all for that, yeah. Now, seems like some odd settings. Let's take a look at what we did here. So if I come here and look at my camera is just kind of slightly offset, a little bit tilted, right? And now we can put things in the world and we should be able to see them show up here. So let's do that. So inside of our lobby A, we're going to create two objects, a floor and a wall. And these are just going to be cubes for now. And then we'll work on adding in our characters and everything later. So underneath lobby A, you want to right click and I'm going to say 3D object cube. And here I'm going to put this at 56.5, negative 0.5, negative 55.5. And the size is going to be 20 by 1 by 7. And this is going to be called lobby floor. Lobby floor. There you go. So as you can see here, this is just a platform that we can put things on. Now I'm going to make another object, 3D object, cube, underneath lobby A. I'm going to call this lobby wall. This will be the back wall that we'll work on for now, okay? So that wall is going to be at 56.5, 2.45, negative 59.5. And then again, he's going to be at 20 by 7 by 1. There you go. So this just gives us a little bit of an environment here that we can put some backdrops to for the time being. So I happen to have an example piece that I'm not going to include in the final product to you guys right now, but just to show you kind of a sneak peek of what that will look like. If I go to my meshes, characters, I have a surprise here. Let's see. So we'll throw this guy in here. And would you go back to, it's over here. So move him into position. It's getting closer. Should be able to go to 0 in the world and he should end up, yeah, pretty close to, there you go. So here's our character and I can put him on the floor here. And he's all set. He's got his Ultimate Battle Royale t-shirt on. And he's just set up to be character in the world, and he has just a very basic animation, but we could position him. And later we're going to set up our spawn points here. So we'll have our different characters. We'll have like your character front and center. And then, you know, when your friends join and that kind of thing, they'll be all over the place like this. And then these guys are set up so that if I hit play now, they have an animation already set that they'll just kind of idle here. But this is the idea, right? So this environment here, and then we'll be able to put our characters in here. We'll adjust the lighting later. We'll adjust all the settings. We'll have our characters all set up. See, they're all simultaneous because it's the same guy. But this shows us the kind of base setup now. And then later, as we start to tie different things in together, we'll be able to say, okay, here's a position in the scene now. I want you to spawn my character with what my character looks like, with the gear he has on, etc., etc. So this is just a little quick synopsis of, you know, what's coming. But for now, we have our scene all set up. Look at all the work we've done today. This is fantastic. This looks very nice and professional. And we have some really good stuff set up for next time. So we open up our menu as, again, we see our play drawer. We have some pretty cool stuff here that this is now going to be animated. So we'll talk about animating that. So you'll see that'll slide open. You'll be able to choose your options. And I like the fact that it kind of overlaps our bar here. That's pretty cool, right? It will overlap, so it had some three-dimensionality to this. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming. This is the first step. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Recent events have been really tough, but we're back in it. We're going to roll through it, and we got a lot coming, so I'm excited to get going. I'm going to save my work here. Control S, make sure you always save. As you can see, all of our stuff is nicely organized, so we can see which lobby we're going to show. And I will put this up with the GitHub repo, so you guys will be able to pull the project and just have all this work already done as a reference. But do go through the steps. It's good practice doing it, getting used to it. And yeah, we will continue next time. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.